Hi everyone, this week we're making a paw stocking. This is great for both cats and dogs. The reason I'm doing this one is that I'd previously made one for our blog, and there are a few changes needed in order to bring it up to date with methods that I now use. The last ones were made back in 2020 and they needed a little work. So thanks to Harry Bell for the kick to redo these. You'll need our pattern for this, which I'll link to in the description. It's completely free to download. You need to print that out and tape pieces 1 and 2 together as indicated on the pattern. Using that pattern, you need the following cuts: 2 from your main fabric, 2 from your lining fabric, and 2 from wadding. From the lining fabric, cut a rectangle measuring 3 by 6 inches. This is for the hanging loop. You'll also need a contrasting piece of fabric for making up the centre pad and the toes. In order for this to sit nicely, you'll also need to use fuser web or similar. Again, I'll link to this and the fabrics in the description. I already have the main pieces of fabric cut, so I'll be starting with getting the paw pads ready. Over to the ironing board. Take a piece of fabric that's just a little too large to fit the centre pad and the 4 toe pads. Give it a little iron if it's wrinkled. Apply fuser web to the back of that with a warm iron. Ensure that the fusible webbing isn't running over the edge of the fabric. You don't want to get this stuck to your ironing board. With the paper still in place, draw around the centre pad and the toe pads. Top tip, don't try to use a heat erasable pen when you've just warmed up the fabric. Good old biro works best. Also remember that we need 4 toe pads. The pattern should be face down on the paper side of the fabric. Now they're all drawn, you can set that aside until you're ready to cut them out. But while we're at the iron, we can prep the hanging loop. Fold it in half across its longest edge and press to make a centre line. Open up and fold down one side to that centre line and press again. Repeat this with the other side. Then fold both together and give one final press. that's now ready to be sewn. One thing to note about these paw pads is that you can use felt instead of fabric. The edges won't fray if you use felt, but I would still suggest using fusible webbing to secure them before sewing them in place. Now all your pieces are fusible webbing on the back and your other pieces are cut, we can start construction. Sew down both sides of the hanging loop close to the edge, then set that aside. Take one of your main fabric pieces and place the centre and toe pads in place. The pattern shows an indication of where they need to be placed, but don't worry if they're a tiny bit out. Peel off the backing paper and apply heat from the iron onto the pieces to adhere them to the right side of your fabric piece. Now they're attached, we can sew them down. Normally I'd use a tearaway backing, but as we're using wadding anyway, I don't find it's required. Lay the piece on top of one of the wadding pieces and pin them together in a few places just to stop them from shifting. I normally use a double blanket stitch for applique, but that's because I'm used to having lots of stitches on options on my machine. There are many people that use older machines handed down through generations, and those simply don't have the same stitches. So for the sake of your sanity, I'm going to use a regular zigzag stitch. However, I am going to set the length low. I think I have a 1.2 set for the length. Sew around all the pieces that you've ironed on. They're sewn in place, so I'm stopping now. However, if you wanted to quilt any areas of the stocking, now would be the time to do it. You can optionally quilt the back too. Just place the main fabric piece on top of the other piece of wadding, with the right side facing up, and quilt away until you're happy. Take the two main pieces, the ones you added the wadding to, and place them right sides together. Pin them. Sew around the entire thing, leaving the flat top section completely open. Remember to backstitch when you start and when you get to the end, so that the stitches don't pull away when we're turning later. Clip any curves, or better still, use a set of pinking shears around the entire stocking. Onto the lining, if you want to add a letter or letters or name or whatever to the stocking cuff, now's the time to add them. Lay your lining right side down and fold the top down by 3 inches. Add your letter or letters in the same way that you added the paw pads. I'm not adding a letter to this one, but if I were, I'd place it right side up. So let's just write this. So it would just sit like this in the middle. You do want it to sit up slightly further than middle. Now how to explain. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance across this bottom raw edge. So when you found centre, just shift it up by about another 1/4 inch. Now, pin your two lining pieces together. Again, right sides of the fabric should be facing one another. When you get to the bottom section where the toes are, add a couple of extra pins, about 3 inches apart. This will show you where to start and stop stitching, as we need to leave a small section open for turning out. Now I'm pausing the video here because I made a boo-boo. I'll go off and sew around this entire thing, leaving my turning up, but completely forgetting to add the hanging loop inside. So before you start this bit, watch a part of the video to ensure that you know where to place the loop before you start sewing the lining. Here we are, completely forgot. So I'll unpick a small section from that side and pop it in there. Take your hanging loop fabric and fold it in half. Place it between the lining pieces at the top left edge of the stocking. Place it 3 inches down from the top flat edge of the lining pieces. The folded bit should be pointed up slightly and be inside the stocking. The raw edges should protrude out through the seam allowance. Pin this in place. I've said it before and I'm sure I'll say it again. If I mess up, I'll keep it in the video so that you can learn from my often silly mistakes. So as with the main pieces, the flat top section will not be sewn. Sew around the lining, remembering to backstitch at the start and end, and remembering to leave that 3-inch open in the bottom of the foot. Right, turn the main pieces right way out, leaving the lining still inside out at this point. Slide the main piece inside the top of the lining. You'll notice the lining and main pieces are now right sides together. When you do this, if you've added the letters to the cuff, ensure that the paw pads are facing the lining piece that contains the name or letters that you added. Match up the seams on either side and pin all the way round. Sew around this using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Pull the main fabric out through the opening that were left in the lining. Once it's pulled through, top stitch across the opening that you left in that lining. Don't worry, this won't be seen, it'll be inside the stocking. Now push the lining inside the stocking. Fold over the cuff so that your hanging loop is on the top edge. And that's it. Ready to stuff with lots of goodies. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please hit the like button on the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, happy sewing.